What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. We're getting back into our head coach candidate breakdowns, and we have somebody I've actually been dying to get to in the Ravens offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, and he's intrigued me the most just because the vast amount of experience that he holds. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Him being 57 years old isn't an aspect that I love. Health concerns, potentially, right? Nothing that's come up that I've seen in the last decade or so. So maybe we're fine on that standpoint, but just something to keep in mind in that at any given drop, there could be some health concerns that come up that take away from him. And Bruce Arians comes to the top of the mind. Mike Westhoff, who was helping out the Broncos this year as an assistant head coach. But outside of that, from an experience standpoint, from the vast amount of knowledge, situational football he's been able to gain, it's Ben Johnson and it's Todd Monken for me. There's a lot of guys that are still close, and I'm not sure how I would separate a lot of these OCs into tiers just yet, but Todd Monken was a guy that I wanted 2 years ago. He's a guy that I would desperately love to have now. And of course, with any one of these conversations, you have to start it off with the notice that with Woody Johnson being at the helm, who knows how this thing shakes out. The fact that I've seen John Gruden and the other name, what was the other rumor name that came out? Matt Nagy being one of the maybe two presumed front runners for a potential swap in head coach duties here for the New York Jets. Anything's on the table, but we need to sell out to try to get guys like Ben Johnson and Todd Monken and not just go for the B tier group because we assume that that's all that we can land, B tier or less. So nonetheless, let's start off with the coaching history, right? You talk about him having 36 plus years of coaching experience, and the way that you see him operate this Baltimore Ravens offense absolutely shows. Now, he's intriguing to me because he hasn't had enough head coaching experience for me to say that he is a program builder, but from an offensive coordinator standpoint and the fact that he's run offensive, had multiple offenses, multiple strategies, multiple different teams that he's impacted for 30 plus years, it's hard not to really give him that label, right? And it's not like it's just been one-time flashes here and there. This is a guy that turned around Southern Mississippi. This is a guy that's had success with the Ravens, University of Georgia, the Browns, the Bucks, the Jags. Anywhere he's went, he's been able to, if not completely flip the script on what the offensive woes were, he's been able to instill strong points, things that were already in place with the roster currently available, and the previous OC and team just didn't respond and pick up what that regime was putting down before Monken stepped foot in there. So you take a look at all of these different teams he's been with. I want to say he started off at San Diego State. I couldn't remember. Didn't want to jot down every single place, but offensive coordinator at Eastern Michigan, OC and quarterback coach at Oklahoma State, a head coach for Southern Mississippi, Jaguars wide receiver coach, the Buccaneers OC and wide receiver coach, the Browns OC for University of Georgia. He was their OC and quarterback coach, and of course the current offensive coordinator for the Ravens. And he hasn't had as many accolades, or at least I didn't dig deep enough into that to see, but it doesn't feel like he's ever been truly rewarded for a lot of these elite performances he's been able to get his team to achieve. He was last year's finalist for AP NFL Assistant Coach of the Year, and he was the Conference USA's Coach of the Year back when he was the head coach of Southern Mississippi State. So at least in some generality, right, he is widely regarded as a offensive aficionado and a guy that many people would kill to have, right? I know for a fact that I think it's Oklahoma State really is looking to, at least based on last year's performance, they were really looking to bring him back with their head coach struggling. And he still may have more college opportunities and stuff, but we're finally getting into the NFL ranks. It's his time to shine, right? At this point, you want to jump. And this is a guy that had opportunities last year, right? He went and who was it? He had interviews with the Chargers. He had interviews with the Panthers. Ended up walking away, realizing that he didn't just want to go anywhere, right? Specifically, the quote I saw mentioned, I had a great job and I was only going to leave it for an elite opportunity. This was that, from an organization on down, from ownership to personnel to head coach to hopefully have Lamar, but I didn't know that. And this was him on his way into the Baltimore Ravens OC position, coming from the University of Georgia. So he's thought about it before helping out the Ravens. He's thinking about it now that he'll have ample opportunities to move on from the Ravens, and rightfully so, right? You take a look at the weapons, just some of the names that have been thrown out there over the course of his time, touching base with a lot of guys. And this is a very small list considering 36 years of experience, but these are some of the high profile names that he's helped achieve success, whether that's going into the NFL or whether that's being in the NFL and helping these guys set some career years or personal records for themselves. Quarterback Lamar Jackson, wide receiver Mike Evans, Zay Flowers, running back Gus Edwards, Derrick Henry, quarterback Stetson Bennett, running back Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield, Jameis Winston, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Nick Mullins back in college, Brandon Whedon back in college, and then you look at other guys like Justin Blackmon, the wide receiver Reggie Williams, wide receiver Dwayne Bowe, and wide receiver Buster Davis for some of my more historical fans that were around during the 80s and such, 80s, 90s, etc. here. But one of the things that I really appreciate is when you get 36 years of experience, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to become a master at a particular scheme, right? Like a West Coast offense or an air raid or something, or because you're going to be influenced and touching bases with so many different coaches and caliber of coaches, you're going to start slowly but surely implementing everything into kind of like a melting pot of an offense. And yes, you have your primary staples that you love, but there's heavy influences, heavy notes of everything. And with Todd Monken, that's one of the things I appreciated most. You take a look at them transitioning from Greg Roman's and what he was operating on the ground attack to what they're doing now. And Todd Monken definitely has a blueprint over it, right? It wasn't just picking up from what they already had. It was finding a way to improve based on the pieces they currently had at that point. And then when you find out that he gets a Deontay Johnson and he has a Derrick Henry to help himself out, he has a Voorhees coming back on the offensive line after a devastating injury. He has some of these additional pieces that the previous staff also didn't have to help implement things. It just makes it so much better. A wide variety of things he can do within his scheme. You've seen him operate a spread perimeter offense within his time with the University of Georgia. You've seen the power running game in places like LSU, in places like Southern Mississippi. You've seen the air raid option, the air raid attack, which is also something that his brother, who I believe is the head coach or the OC for Army, you've seen him utilize that as one of the guys that can execute it at a high level. Tokens of the offense, he really likes to staples, right? Create more space with formations, put more speed on the field. I know that was paraphrasing, but essentially a direct quote from how he wanted this Ravens offense in 2024 to perform after seeing how he was able to get things to go last year. And multiple tight end sets. I think the Ravens are currently one of the league leaders, somewhere in like the mid-60s. In that category, which also bodes well for a team like the Jets that have tried to stack up on tight end talent. And then one of the biggest flexes for him is the bunch formation, right? So what I gather and what I pick up when I look at how things have evolved, how he's put different elements into his playbook based on the personnel he had, that at the forefront, right? He's not forcing players in the scheme. He's forcing scheme around players. And again, there's always going to be the core of what he wants to do. And some players will just have to adapt to that if they're not naturally gravitating towards that. But for the most part and wholesalely, he makes sure that he can play to the strengths, and then of course build on that based on watching these players develop or acquiring more players that maybe can help open up the playbook for what they may not currently have. And that's one of the pieces that I love most. Coming out of the bunch formation, you see a lot of that downfield, aggressive game planning and attacking. Gives him a wide variety of options for himself when it comes to defenses that want to be over aggressive. When it comes to having a skilled route runner, you see Zay Flowers, for instance, flourishing within this scheme. And then, of course, the ability to motion, which really gives a quick outlet, a quick red eye look for Lamar Jackson in the event that teams do want to load the box, or they do want to send these exotic blitzes, these heavy pressure looks. They want to stack the box on them. He has options to not only kill him in the short game, he has the ability to go out there and extend those plays and really cause havoc, attacking things downfield. So love how he's played, and considering that 2 years ago, Lamar Jackson has been that MVP guy for the last couple years for sure, obviously winning his second last year. But when you look at the fact that he looks like, you can't say unanimous MVP at this point, but Lamar Jackson looks like he's far and away one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It's him and it's Patrick Mahomes right now, based on Mahomes having much less talent and still having his team undefeated. I would just say maybe he's doing more with less. But Lamar Jackson is absolutely shredding the league. I mean, there's very few things, and a few things are extremely minor, that he isn't doing well. And a lot of that definitely has to do with Todd Monken, because it's easy to take a guy that's coming off an MVP year and watch him have a downfall, a downward trend in terms of the development or the consistency that you're seeing. And with anything, or if anything, you're seeing Todd Monken actually unlock even more. And there's a lot of things that speak to the fact that not only the instant success that Monken helped the Ravens achieve last year, you look at some of the things they're even doing this year, and it's just, it is mind-boggling, right? Number 4 in scoring with 28.4 points per game in 2023. They had an NFL high 156.5 rushing yards per game in 2023. Top 10 in third and fourth down conversions and red zone efficiency last year. Lamar Jackson got his MVP for the second time, as we mentioned. He's helped teams like University of Georgia become number 5 in national ranking in points per game with 39.8. And then he was also ranked as the second best offensive coordinator going into 2024. And I would probably say, if he's not number 1, the floor for him is definitely number 2, even though there's guys like Slowick out there that you would love, and Cliff Kingsbury, who's doing a killer job as well. This stat is one that is particularly important to me, right? This is one that impacts what we've seen this year from the Ravens, something that the Jets have done very little of. He's scored touchdowns on 14 of the past 15 red zone possessions. And this isn't year to date. This is at some point over the course of this 2024 season. But 14 of 15 possessions in the red zone is absolutely insane when you consider the 65% conversion mark being a pretty elite number. Being 14 of 15, what is that, 90-something percent, some high 80s, something like that. We haven't sniffed anything close to that in a long time. So outside of all the accolades, the University of Georgia stuff, the 2 years with Baltimore, even flipping, and I think that was one of the biggest things for me when he did have a head coach opportunity. It doesn't sound great, but he took a team that never won a game, I believe in Southern Mississippi, to turning him into a 9-5 team and seeing them be able to reach a bowl game, right? Playoffs in college for themselves. You love to see it, but just the overwhelming experience, the background that he has, entire families in coaching. Dad has been a high school football coach for years and years and years and years. So you're talking about a guy that grew up learning the X and O's, seeing his dad compose a playbook, understanding how to operate and facilitate the flow of the game and dictate how you want to see a team play. And then even after college, where, by the way, he also has the former player experience, just not at the NFL ranks. He was the former quarterback for Knox College, lettering 3 years, but also was I believe, a lettering player in baseball as well. But he knew he was going to dive into coaching pretty soon or right after, and he did just that after graduating. So all of these elements, being able to see the game through a quarterback's eyes, know what they're looking to do, how to explain concepts to them, get these guys developed. Again, you take a look at the quarterbacks he's worked with: Stetson Bennett, Jameis Winston, Nick Mullins, Brandon Whedon, some guys that without his tutelage, I don't think you're talking about a lot of those guys as first rounders. A lot of those guys as being the quality of college player that they were without his guidance. And I think that's the most important piece, right? We need a guy on offense that can ensure the development of these players. It's been far too often that the Jets find themselves, even if they get a quality player, it's a short burst, right? It's maybe weeks of excellent play before a fall off or a strong year, and then we never see them recapture that glory, and it ends up looking like a wasted pick. This is a guy that I feel like can coax the best out of a lot of these players that we have. And I think his old school throwback style as well, kind of going into the realm of the Mike Vrabel type personalities, would be one that would match well with the team that is sorely looking for that true visionary, a guy that has unwavering belief in what he's doing and how he can get these players to achieve that. And I'm not saying, it's one of the things I feel like Robert Saleh had, he just couldn't execute. Todd Monken, I don't think that really goes into question here. And so even for a guy that's lacking the head coach experience at the NFL level, he's had it at the college ranks, which I know it's a completely different game. But this is a guy that I would feel extremely confident for a number of reasons. One, his side of the ball, I feel like would essentially never be in question. Two, he has so many connections over his 36 years of experience when it comes to the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I feel like it's easier to stop a nosebleed on defense than it is on offense. And so what I mean by that is he should be able to find a quality defensive coordinator that he can pair with himself to where, yes, he can maybe be that CEO style guy, but even if he wants to be the overseer of the offense and he communicates with the defense as needed based on what he's liking or not liking, he can be fully confident in that he can get that side of the ball working, and the defense, even if they're just average, etc., they can get the job done to really just help out the offense, right? And play a little bit more of that, I want to say, synergistic football, right? Where the defense is helping the offense is helping the defense, special teams is helping out everybody. And you can look at the Ravens as a really good picture of that, right? They lose McDonald, and then this year they have one of the poorest secondaries in all of the league. I'm sure they're probably the worst by far. You look at Joe Burrows being able to just absolutely light them up, and really anybody that has one or two decent weapons and a solid quarterback. But they've been able to carve them up. They've given up a ton of points. Ground game is still pretty stout, but not the caliber defense that the Ravens are usually accustomed to seeing. And the offense has more than been able to make up for that in many cases. And even with a couple poorly called games by Todd Monken, you still see them in the upper echelon in the NFL for a reason. One of the things that I really, really love here that captures his impact on the offense is that not only are they extremely effective through the air, they're extremely effective through the ground. And he hasn't done anything to take away from what makes Lamar Jackson that elite MVP caliber quarterback as one of the best dual threats to ever enter the game, or the best, and what I think many people would confidently probably say at this point in his career. This is based on one of the DVOA metrics, which I really, really love. It's an efficiency-based model, and it really looks at our guys performing as expected, below, or above in layman's terms, right? The gap between the Ravens and the second-ranked Commanders is bigger than the gap between the Commanders and the 14th-ranked Philadelphia Eagles. The Ravens are dominating. They're one of the best in the league. And it looks like it. It clearly looks like it. And that's really saying something, considering, again, how poorly the defense overall is playing when it comes to allowing big plays, converting touchdowns, etc., etc. But diving into a few more things from a schematic standpoint, I do like the fact that with his playbook, he seems to be able to take advantage of a certain DC's defensive philosophies, guys who like to be a little bit more aggressive, or just if the natural defense is set up like that based on how they want to play and the personnel groupings or players that they think they have that may be better than the Ravens offensive line. They've developed an elite screen game. I don't think anybody is doing anything close to what the Ravens are able to when it comes to quick dump offs and just eating up chunk plays immediately and erasing the defense's ability to really press the line of scrimmage, to really want to throw those exotic blitzes while sacrificing additional coverage and last line of defense when you have a guy like Zay Flowers on the corner or a Justice Hill coming out of the backfield that they can really take advantage of. And then Monken scripts the first 12 plays, which I don't think that in and of itself is unique. Everybody is scripting something. But if you want to consider what that equates to, that's potentially 3 or so extremely poor drives, right? So maybe an entire quarter. Or if you're getting a really, really good game going, that's one series, a 10, 11 play-ish type drive, maybe a series and a half. And so this is a guy to me where it feels like you can really get a feel for how he's adjusting to the defense in real time. He's not just waiting until halftime. He's actually going out there and being able to get things done in the first half to set up how they want to attack this defense in the second half. Players have had some interesting comments around Monken that I really, really appreciate and gave me some insight into what he may be as a head coach personality. Lamar highlighted his willingness to take feedback into the game and change play calling mid-game. So I don't know if this is during his script or after, but I would just assume in general, he talked about the fact that you'll see Todd Monken work with Lamar to craft up an entire play on the spot. And the offense is able to go out there and effectively execute many of these plays, given the fact that they are such a talented offense. And I think that speaks to the preparation, that speaks to a lot of the practice work. I know they had a pretty rough preseason, and the first 2 games for them were pretty bad too. And, you looked at the Ravens being 0-2 and thought things were falling off the rails. But ever since, and I know they dropped another game or 2 here or there that they probably really shouldn't have lost with Todd Monken getting too pass happy. But overall, if you're going to get pass happy with a young MVP quarterback in Lamar Jackson, understanding you have Derrick Henry and you have a Justin Hill and a Keaton Mitchell in the backfield, I could potentially live with that. You can't say the same if he's going to be on the Jets, right? But more often than not, the fact that they're leading the league through the air and through the ground, he's obviously doing more things correct than not. But I absolutely love the fact that they can go out there and just chef some stuff up. And the team is confident in being able to go out there and get it done in only Todd Monken's second year. And considering some of these players that are just getting to him, like a Deontay Johnson that they picked up via trade, speaks volumes to me. Something that I don't think we've been able to do great at all when it comes to great practices, at least according to a lot of these players and coaches, transitioning to effective Sundays and primetime games, etc. for us. Accountability is one of the biggest hot word items for us, buzzwords for the New York Jets. Accountability is a staple for Todd Monken. I heard a couple of players saying that he'll call out players in front of teammates when they're taking notes, when they're going through meetings, walkthroughs, etc. He's not a guy that will necessarily bash his team in public, much like what we saw with Robert Saleh when it comes to protecting guys. But in those meeting rooms behind closed doors, he's letting them know what's up, and we're getting it corrected immediately in ASAP. So I love that standpoint. I'm not really a huge rah-rah yelling Marine, Army drill type of guy. I happen to respond well to that for some reason back in my playing days. But overall, when I look at head coaches that I want, I don't think, especially in this day and age and how many of these players are coming up, that necessarily clicks a lot of the time. But it seems like he's one of those young spirits, old soul kind of guys that can mash the best of both worlds together and gets the most out of his guys here. And then just to finish this up, 3 tenets for him, right? What he's effectively looking to do to get his team ready is attitude, is energy, is body language. And yeah, man, I don't know what more to say when it comes to Todd Monken. And we could drill into this all day, right? Obviously, I do very high level stuff when it comes to the scheme and kind of what I've seen, stuff I research and pick up, etc. But Todd Monken, I think, is still probably going to be the hottest commodity, not named Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson maybe beats him out just because he also has the youth on his side. And then, of course, the fact that the Lions have the worst history comparing the two franchises, right, when it comes to success in the regular season and then, of course, playoff visits. But there's something also impressive to me about a guy that can step into a successful franchise and he doesn't just pick up where the previous regime or regimes left off. He actually improves and he builds upon it, right? You can see if I'm looking at the Ravens without a Todd Monken, I would expect maybe not a serious drop off, but one that would be concerning enough, right? I think some players will still perform as expected, like your Zay Flowers, like your Lamar Jackson, that have been able to stick around at least for those 2 years with them to develop some of the things. But yeah, overall, Todd Monken he's up there for me, right? I threw the rankings up earlier, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have him in probably that second spot for me. But let me know what you guys think. Todd Monken versus all these other guys. Where are you ranking them? What do you love? Chances you think that we get him? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.